1971. With 1970 and our celebration of 100 years of ministry in South Haven now in the past, it was time to pray and seek what God wanted from these people called the First Baptist Church. The world was changing, too fast for some and not fast enough for others. As usual, late winter and early spring focused on the planning and participation of the annual Lenten and Easter programs. In May, FBC hosted a concert for its members and the community. A folk group from Judson College, a Baptist school founded in 1963, is on tour with a program called Keepers of the Light. The members of the group share their talent and their testimonies of how Christ is working in their lives. On the Great Lakes, new ships start to appear that are bigger than their predecessors. These new ships are in the 1,000-foot range, increasing cargo capacity. In July, the 26th Amendment to the Constitution is ratified, lowering the voting age from 21 to 18. 1971 would also bring the world the invention of the microchip to the commercial world. Electronic devices were shrinking in size. Radios, calculators, and computers were now becoming portable and able to operate on battery power. Back in South Haven, the fall school year would change its policy of which classes were only for boys or only for girls. Reverend K. Ryan from FBC argues the case for his daughter's desire to attend auto shop class. The board changed their position, and she was able to attend. Later, the school board would formulate a policy change on the issue for future scheduling and eligibility. In the music world, the world would mourn over the loss of Louis Armstrong and contemporary singer Jim Morrison. 1972, in national news, February would mark the historic visit of President Nixon to Communist China. Later in May, the United States and the Soviet Union sign a Strategic Arms Control Agreement known as SALT, the Strategic Arms Limitation Talks. This would halt the increase of building additional ballistic missile launchers. In South Haven, in June, FBC welcomes a new pastor, Reverend Clarence Rodd. He comes from Bankers Baptist Church. June would also be the start of the Watergate scandal, which started with the break-in of the Democratic National Committee headquarters. The investigation would lead to revealing multiple abuses of power by the Nixon administration. In Michigan legislature, this would be the year that the Michigan Lottery Bureau is created. Proceeds from the lottery ticket sales would go to help boost the revenue for Michigan's School Aid Fund. In September, at the Olympic Summer Games held in Munich, a terrorist group affiliated with Black September murdered 11 members of the Israeli team. It would be a black mark on the history of World Olympic Games for decades. In November, FBC has a showing of the film entitled There's a New Wind Blowing. The film, produced by Family Films, emphasizes the Key 73 program of evangelism. Attention is focused on 4 widely different congregations in the United States. In January of 1973, Richard M. Nixon is sworn in at his second inauguration. Also in January, the Supreme Court makes its highly volatile decision regarding abortion rights with the Roe v. Wade case. In the spring, FBC is ready for the Lenten and Good Friday services. In New York City, the World Trade Center was completed in April. For a short time, the Twin Towers would be in the record books as the world's tallest buildings. Each tower had 110 floors, with a height of over 1,350 feet. In June, FBC's Pastor Rodd participates in the South Haven graduation ceremonies. 1973 would also be the year for peace talks with North Vietnam. and pulling out U.S. military personnel from the war. U.S. prisoners of war were also released. The whole process took almost the entire year, with negotiations established and ceasefire agreements broken and reestablished. For Michigan, 400,000 men and women were involved in the Vietnam War. Michigan makes national news when a fire retardant product, PBB, is accidentally mixed with livestock feed, causing a crisis that threatens Michigan's agriculture. With continuing turmoil in Washington, D.C. over the Watergate affair and allegations of corruption, Vice President Spiro Agnew resigns over charges of corruption and income tax evasion. Later in December, Gerald R. Ford is confirmed by Congress and sworn in as the new vice president. In the fall, the beginning of 1973's oil crisis starts when the Organization of Arab Petroleum Exporting Countries, or OPEC, proclaimed an oil embargo against nations, the U.S. being one of them, who were perceived as supporting Israel during the Yom Kippur War earlier in the year. This caused havoc throughout many of the countries. Limited supplies led to gasoline rationing, long lines, and large price increases. The crisis would last through March 1974. Closing out the year, NASA reveals the first close-up pictures of the surface of Jupiter from Pioneer 10. FBC makes news with their gold and white ornaments that were handmade throughout the year of Christian symbols and emblems. They are displayed in a store window shortly before decorating a tree at FBC for the Christmas season. 1974, kicking off the new year, FBC hosts a concert featuring The Joyful Noise, a group of 6 Judson College students. They sang and gave testimony at the church service and the concert, which were both open to the public. 1974 would be the year that the world population reached 4 billion people. In June, FBC receives a new pastor, Reverend Charles Wilson, coming from the First Baptist Church in Marseille, Illinois. In July, chaos embroils Washington, D.C. The House Judiciary Committee recommends to a full House that President Nixon be impeached on the grounds of obstruction of justice, abuse of power, and contempt of Congress. In August, President Nixon resigns. Vice President Gerald R. Ford becomes the 38th U.S. President. In October, FBC hosts the viewing of a film entitled Fall of a Great Nation. They are also involved with a musical program in cooperation with the Hope Reformed Church for the community. In December, FBC participates in the Winter Church basketball games. Pastor Wilson likes to play b-ball. 1975. At the January annual meeting, the record shows a building fund balance of $4,995.69. Normally, this entry on the financial report would only have a few $100s, mostly for routine maintenance work, but something is happening. Also in January, the first personal computer is released to the public for purchase, the Altair 8800. FBC has a World's Vision Day and in February hosts mission programs for its members in the community. Guest speakers come for 2 weekends of lectures from the Monroe Baptist Church. In May, FBC does a Love Loaves program to help combat hunger and hosts a Texas college singing group who delivers a program for church members and the community. In September, Pastor Wilson holds a prize-winning contest challenging the listening skills of the congregation. The contest, FBI, which stands for Faithful Bible Investigators, took place over 4 weeks. Prizes were awarded: a $25 camp scholarship and a $30 family Bible. Points were awarded for bringing someone to church for the first time, and additional points were awarded for answers to questions posed by the contest judge. In the fall, the swell of building a new church building is taking root. Land is purchased on the west corner of Blue Star Highway and 6th Avenue. 1976. The annual FBC meeting shows a building fund of $10,711.35 on the balance sheet. In April, the church takes out a newspaper ad for Holy Week. With the beginning of summer, FBC starts to hold prayer meetings in its members' homes. In July, the church has a lay speaker service, and another one was held in October. FBC shared Reverend Wilson with the community as he gives the message at the community Thanksgiving service. 1977. Annual meeting financial reports show $19,102 in the building fund. On the national scene, Jimmy Carter is sworn in as the 39th U.S. President. In April, FBC puts on an Easter cantata for the community. The response was so positive that a second performance was scheduled 2 weeks later. In the entertainment world, Star Wars becomes the highest-grossing film of all time. On a sadder note, the king of rock and roll, Elvis Presley, dies. He was 42 years old. In November, Pastor Wilson pleads for help with the pigeon problem on the roof and the belfry of the church. In January 1978, the FBC annual financial report lists $34,835 as the building fund balance. In July, the first test tube baby was born in England. In some circles, this was considered the most remarkable medical breakthrough of the 20th century. In September, President Carter and members of his cabinet were able to put together a meeting with Egyptian President Anwar Sadat and Israeli Prime Minister Menachem Begin at Camp David. Their goal? A quest for seeking peace in the Middle East. 1979. At FBC's annual meeting, the building fund shows a balance of $51,802. The U.S. establishes diplomatic ties with mainland China for the first time since the communistic takeover in 1949. In March, a malfunction at the 3 Mile Island nuclear plant in Pennsylvania causes a near meltdown of the reactor. This event would cause thousands of safety design changes to current and future U.S. nuclear plants. In the Middle East, tensions rise in Iran. Students storm the U.S. Embassy in Tehran and hold 66 people hostage. Later, 13 hostages were released. The U.S. government tries to work with diplomatic means for the release of the hostages. In the meantime, the military was collecting information and formulating potential plans if the negotiations fail. Back in South Haven, FBC prayed for those people, and they continued to trust in their God for His will to be done.